From the Ministry of the Presidency in Georgetown, this is This Week with the President, with Janelle Carter.
Welcome to another edition of This Week with the President, a weekly news magazine which provides you with an in-depth look at the policies, programs, and work of the President of Guyana in his quest to realize the good life for all Guyanese. I'm your host, Janelle Carter. In the news this week, President reiterates call for protection of small states at CELAC Summit, government to expand 3B's program, and President calls for alternative to corporal punishment. Improving Guyana's international image, letting the world know that it is a prime investment destination, as well as a country whose input can influence issues and decisions in the global and regional arena, are just some of the foreign policy goals that the government is working towards. This objective was further advanced during President David Granger's recent participation at the 4th Summit of the Heads of State and Government of the Community of Latin America and Caribbean State, CELAC, in Ecuador. In his address to the heads, the president focused heavily on the threats that small developing states are faced with, particularly as it relates to transnational crimes, territorial integrity, and climate change.
Well, small states are very important because without the protective shield that we speak about, without fair trading practices, without greater equity, the small states will be vulnerable, and once the small states are vulnerable, everybody is vulnerable. So it is in the collective interest to pay attention to the concerns of the small states.
He emphasized that the solution to these threats are far beyond the individual capabilities, even of the strongest states in the CELAC bloc. The president called for CELAC to promote the hemisphere as a zone of peace and for countries to commit to the pursuit of peaceful resolution to controversies.
And the quicker we build consensus and to the extent that it's possible unify the interests of the Caribbean and South America, the quicker people will have a better life.
The electorate of any country expects at a minimum their government to uphold and safeguard the tenets of transparency, accountability, and good governance. The government of Guyana recognizes this and has, in the past 8 months, taken several policy decisions to ensure that these principles remain foremost in its development agenda and that the administration of state affairs are tailored to meet the interests of the people whom it serves.
The Ministry of the Presidency has been reconfigured to combine the offices of the President, Vice President, and Prime Minister, and Ministers of State, Citizenship, and Social Cohesion. This combination, we feel, enhances governance and, especially through the Office of the Prime Minister, manages the government's business and legislative agenda in the National Assembly. Our Ministry of Social Cohesion, a ministry within the Ministry of the Presidency, will continue its arduous work to reinforce national unity.
The government believes that the reconfiguration of the cabinet will not only enhance its national unity thrust, but will also provide for greater economic independence. The bringing together of a 6-party coalition was seen as a significant achievement in Guyana's political landscape, and the changes in the cabinet is just another step to ensure inclusion of all parties.
We have abided largely by the accord which brought us into existence on the 14th of February 2015. The Prime Minister is now fully part of the presidency. His duties are clear.
2016 has been touted as the year of renaissance and greater economic prosperity and unity among all Guyanese, irrespective of race, religion, and political affiliation, are uppermost on the national agenda.
We must, in 2016, dispel enmity among individuals and groups. We must move forward as a united nation. Colonial rule fomented divisions of race, religion, and region, which have imposed a big burden on the slender shoulders of our small society. These divisions for 50 years have frustrated our economic development, making national unity elusive. National unity does not preclude the existence of differences in philosophies or opinions. It does include a willingness to respect each other's rights. Our Golden Jubilee is a propitious moment for all Guyanese to put an end to hateful and unhelpful political discord, disaffection, and disunity. Our Golden Jubilee is a golden opportunity for us to cement national unity at the political level and at the economic level as well.
A study carried out by Frontier in Neuroscience in 2013 on the effects of breakfast on behavior and academic performance in children and adolescents suggested that breakfast positively affects learning and behavioral, cognitive, and school performance. Cognizant of this, President Granger recently announced his intention to add breakfast and books to his Boats, Buses, and Bicycles program, which is aimed at ensuring school-age children are able to attend school unhindered. Stay with us as we take a look at how these two Bs will positively impact school-age children.
And yes, we'll add another B. We'll provide books too. And I'll ask the chairman of Region 10 to make sure that every child going to school gets not only access to transportation, but also access to books. And eventually, access to yet another B, breakfast. And one of my officers right now is investigating the cost of a standard breakfast.
This standard breakfast, the president said, will include a nutritional dairy product and mainly locally made food, which should give children a good start for the day ahead. He expects that adding breakfast and books to the Boat, Buses, and Bicycles program will help to provide children with a positive start to the school day, in keeping with his policy of seeing every child in school.
So I'm not surprised that every single month, children are dropping out of schools all around this country. 400 children drop out of schools every month in this country. Some of them never to go back to school again because they can't afford to go to school. The parents don't have the minibus fare, or they have to go to work early. So at age 10 or 11 or 12, they already drop out and they can't complete the education. So part of the problem is the lack of money to provide transportation for children. Part of the solution is the provision of transportation to allow children to get to school. And it's my job to solve problems.
The head of state announced these two new additions to the 3Bs program at the commissioning ceremony for a school boat in Mackenzie Linden last weekend. The boat has been donated for school children who live in the Upper Demerara River area. In addition, in keeping with his overall vision for youths, which would ultimately lead to Ghana becoming an educated nation with a stronger economy, President Granger called on leaders in the region to establish the Upper Demerara Education Scholarship Trust. In the past, the president had called on communities across the country to set up similar funds, pledging his government's support once their funds are set up to assist school-age children in the respective communities.
And I will help children in this region to get scholarships, just like I gave Taryn Allen 5 years ago. But I will help. I wouldn't throw it up in the sky and tell you, take what you want and left the rest. I'm going to put real money into a trust managed by the Upper Demerara Berbice Region RDC to ensure that children in need are kept in secondary school and they don't have to drop out.
The 3Bs program was launched on the president's 70th birthday last year, and it continues to garner widespread support from corporate Guyana as well as private individuals. The program is administered by the Ministry of Social Cohesion under the stewardship of Minister Amna Ali. When it comes to disciplining children, Guyanese have a wide variety of views on the manner and method that should be used. Some still subscribe to the Bible caution against sparing the rod and spoiling the child. However, others believe that disciplining children with force and by physical means has been a contributory factor to the cycle of violence that currently obtains in our society. This week, we will hear President Granger's view on the topic, as well as views from parents and teachers. Let's take a look. President David Granger, in a recent appearance on the Public Interest, called on Guyanese to move away from the days of licks as a form of disciplining children. The head of state noted that the days for that are long gone, and as a country, we must look at alternative forms of discipline, whether in school or at home. While there may be some initial resistance to this idea, corporal punishment is believed to contribute to antisocial behaviors in young persons. Here's the president's take on this issue.
There was a time when it was typical and people felt, spare the rod to spoil the child. And I think that is ancient, that is backward. A caring parent should use non-force, non-physical means to deal with discipline within the home. And that child would learn to handle conflict. That child would learn to reconcile with other children when he or she goes to school, or he or she gets married. But if people feel that the way to deal with indiscipline or misconduct is flogging, that child will continue the cycle of violence. And when he or she becomes a parent, will use the same methods.
The president also asserted that the cycle of corporal or physical means of discipline has contributed to the high incidence of interpersonal violence in society.
We need to remove all forms of corporal or physical punishment in school or in the home. So maybe 50 years ago, 100 years ago, it might have been typical, but the days of going into the classroom and seeing that wild cane hanging up there, the days of going home and seeing the wild cane, I think are past, and intelligent, educated parents must use different means which don't involve the use of the application of physical force.
Meanwhile, newly appointed Minister of Education, Dr. Rupert Roopnarine, has said that abolishing corporal punishment in the nation's schools is a priority issue for the administration. We also spoke to the man in the street on the topic of abolishing corporal punishment.
I think that it should be exempted because sometimes teachers take advantage of this opportunity too. And when a child goes home and cries to the parents, then it could cause another story which can bring the parents to the school. So I think that they should bring an alternative to this matter, in that they can, if they talk to the child one time, two times, then call the parent and let the parent know what is actually going on. If there's a problem, not just go and jump to conclusion, because you are not that child parent. And there are different ways that many parents may discipline their child. So I think the first measure should be taken is that they should actually contact the parent if anything is wrong.
And I believe that corporal punishment, it's not the way to go. I believe we should find other solution to dealing with children and certain problems, because even beating the children now, children are not, they're getting so accustomed to the licks or the beating that it's not doing anything for them. So I believe that we should find other solution to dealing with certain problems with children.
I think if we know our child is ignorant or at the fact that he like to fight or so, if he have to go out, you let him do all his chores at home, and when it's time for you to go, you tell him he can't go. Beating him won't make he understand, because some children do get immune to licks. Sometimes if you beat me, licks is born and cool. So when the licks born and cool and that coolness finished, they're going to go back again. So you got to punish them so that they will understand, well, this thing we're doing is wrong. So they will come up to be, the children today will come up to be better. We won't have so much young teenager. When you watch Coach Round, you see how much young people, you understand? Too much of them. So I think corporal punishment is, if we work on that, it would be better.
Punishment in school is not really nice for children. I believe the teachers should try to find other ways in other ways in doing it, and see what else they could do. the ministry could find and see what else they could do with the children then, because the children are really going through a set of stress at home. And the stress that going through at home, when you stress them out, when you take them in school, it's going to be more stressed again. It's going to be more stress. They're going to bring violence in school because it don't go in at the schools already.
Article 37 of the Rights of a Child Commission in Guyana dictates that no child should be subject to torture or other cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment or punishment. Let's turn now to the President's diary and take a look at some other meetings that have kept the head of state busy this week. On January 23rd, the President joined with the congregation of the Central Seventh-day Adventist Church to declare open a convention on public affairs and religious liberty, where he underscored the importance of strong leadership in churches.
When you describe yourself as a shepherd, you come down from your pedestal and you mingle with the flock. And he who cannot serve will find himself or herself incapable of leading.
The event was held under the theme Embracing Christ's Method, Making a Difference. President Granger also met with 2 Scottish dignitaries from the Grand Imperial Council of Scotland and members of the Guyana Conclave of this Masonic organization, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary. The Grand Imperial Council of Scotland is grounded on the teachings of Freemasonry, which is one of the world's oldest secular fraternal societies, which originated in Scotland. Now let's take a closer look at President Granger and First Lady Mrs. Sandra Granger's new life at State House. Guyana's first couple has become an inspiration to many persons. Citizens have taken note of their warm interaction with each other and their easy camaraderie with members of the public. But have you heard the story of how these 2 individuals became the couple they are, married for almost half of a century? This week we will tell you.
First time I met him, I was a friend of his younger sister, and one day we were playing Scrabble, and he came in and he says, "You want to go to a movie?" And of course we just said yeah. So our first, I won't call it a date, the first time we went out, we went to see Django. So, I like spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
I like kung fu movies.
Yeah.
So after we got married, he used to just drop me to the cinemas and come back for me because it wasn't his big interest. But the first time we went out, we went to see Django with his sister Aileen in tow.
From there on, the 2 courted, and about 2 years later, they tied the proverbial knot. According to Mrs. Granger, back then the president's personality was his most attractive quality.
Well, we eventually started to go out, and I think 2 years down the line, he says, I think we should get married. That was my proposal.
That was the proposal. I think we should. It sounds very much like Mr. Granger.
So
But
that
if there's
was
one
it.
quality that you can speak to at that time that made you think, okay, I can marry this man, what would that have been?
I think he's an easy person, a thoughtful person. He's not loud or aggressive, which would drive me wild anyway. But, he listens. He might not agree with you, but he listens.
For his part, President Granger said that the story of how they met and married isn't a secret, but rather a love story that developed while he was home on leave from the army. Asked about his first thoughts on seeing her, the president said,
What were your first thoughts when you saw her?
That's the secret. That is a secret. That part is a secret.
Since she became First Lady, Mrs. Granger has been using her office to champion women's, children's, and the rights of the elderly, spearheading and implementing projects that would enhance the lives of these vulnerable groups. According to President Granger, the First Lady's determination and support of his administration's work makes him proud. That brings us to the end of this edition of This Week with the President. For regular updates on the Ministry of the Presidency, go to our website www.motp.gov.gy. Like our Facebook page, Ministry of the Presidency, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MOTP Guyana. I'm Janelle Carter. Do have a safe and productive week ahead. Goodbye.